Bunny Akko has to be one of the most adorable things I have seen so far from 2017. To the cute ears, to the cute little nose, it's just such an adorable design for Akko. And I had no idea that that design would actually be sticking with Akko's character throughout the entirety of this episode. When it began and you saw how Akko gave herself bunny ears and all that, and you had a little nose, I thought, oh, it's just gonna disappear probably in a couple minutes. But no, that entire design with Akko stuck with her until the very end of the episode, and I'm like, Yo, Trigger, yeah, you're fucking you're making this episode too adorable. It was so cute. Just the little nose was so fucking cute. I just cannot emphasize that enough. The little nose, the little, bunny nose on Akko was fucking cute. Now, with that being said, though, this episode of Little Witch Academia has come out a lot earlier than normal, now that I think about it, because usually these episodes come out around, 10 or 11 o'clock my time at night, and I just finished watching the episode around 6 o'clock in the day. I mean, that's a little bit late in the day, yes, but I mean, overall, it's a hell of a lot earlier than normal episodes of Little Witch Academia, because, fan translations can vary in times. Sometimes they can come out maybe 6 o'clock in the day, sometimes they can come out 1 o'clock in the morning. It just really depends on how long it takes to translate, and so, I'm glad to see Little Witch Academia a little bit early today, because, to be point blank with all of you, The Walking Dead comes out tonight, and I want to kind of watch it and all that, because I'm pretty hyped up for it. So I'm glad this episode came out early for I can kind of, talk about Little Witch Academia before The Walking Dead comes out. But anyways, getting back on topic though, the conflict of this episode is Akko wanting to find the spring to be able to find and unlock her hidden potential as a witch. As we know, Akko is pretty bad at using magic. I mean, she can use it, but overall, she's pretty fucking bad at using magic. She's not that good. She's not really that talented so far from what we have seen. She has a lot of trouble actually performing magic, and so she realizes this, and she wants to figure out a way to kind of unlock her hidden potential, and so she discovers, you know what, I can go to this spring, I can look at it, and it'll tell me that, I have hidden potential and unlock it for me. And that's kind of what the main objective of the episode is, which leads into the conflict of the episode. Akko gets herself into trouble because she gets in over her head, which is starting to become a reoccurring theme, I have to admit. And it's something I've kind of briefly mentioned already in last week's episode, but I want to mention it once again here. I don't know how many are actually starting to notice this or not, but Little Witch Academia does have a repeated formula going on recently. It's always where Akko, she does something that causes her to either get in trouble or cause everybody else to get in trouble along with her, which causes to where they try to do something which gets them even more in trouble at the end of the episode. But in this case, the episode did end a little bit differently because Akko wasn't overall in more trouble than she began because nobody found out what she did at the end of the episode because Ursula Sensei, it's like, here you go, here's the shiny rod and all that, just keep this all between us, and then let's just carry on. So, in a way, the ending of the episode was a little bit different, but the formula is kind of still the same, and I'm starting to worry about this, actually, because I've noticed there is a repeated pattern going on here with recent episodes of Little Witch, and I mean, there is a very good concept here, a very good story, a good world, good characters, and I've talked about this already with my first couple episode reviews, so I'm not going to kind of dive into that again, but there's a really good, actual anime series here that, Trigger can work with, and I really hope they don't fall into just doing the exact same formula every single week. Akko, gets in trouble or gets everybody else in trouble, she tries to do something that helps people out, and overall, even though she helps people out, she gets in trouble towards the end of the episode, which turns out even worse. Hopefully this doesn't become a repeating thing even more than it already is in future episodes, because it is clearly starting to show with the recent episodes of Little Witch Academia. But with that being said, though, the episode overall, it did have some interesting stuff go on towards the end, especially when Akko found the spring. When she actually noticed and saw it, she actually saw a flashback to her idol, Shiny Chariot. And this is a scene that has a lot of weight to it, because this lets us know that Akko is probably going to get some form of character development in the future. For Akko to see this glimpse of her idol going through all these problems, struggling to become a really great witch, you see the struggle she went through, all these problems, and how she was having a lot of training, she had to train herself to use better magic. You saw that in the flashback. It shows that Akko realizes you cannot take the easy path out. You cannot cannot just, take an easy path and think everything's going to work out just because you're going to a spring and have it unlock your hidden potential. It doesn't work like that. A lot of people have to work their ass off to be able to accomplish and get where they're at in life. And that's kind of what Akko realized in this episode. She cannot take an easy path and take a shortcut. She's going to have to train. She's going to have to work hard at becoming a better witch. And then eventually one day when she's finally ready and has matured, she can go to that spring once again and then finally unlock her hidden potential. And that's kind of what the lesson was in that scene. And it was kind of like Akko is realizing what she was doing wrong and what Akko can prove upon to become a better witch. And we do know that Shiny Chariot is now Ursula Sensei. It's pretty freaking obvious now. I mean, there was already kind of hints here and there overall, but now with this episode, it's pretty much officially confirmed. We saw the hair from, like, the blue hair turn to red hair and then back to blue hair. We know now that that's Shiny Chariot. We don't even need to see the face. It's pretty obvious right now that that is Shiny Chariot. And so, when you saw Ursula Sensei handing the shiny rod over to Akko, it's kind of like Shiny Chariot's like, you'll be fine. You'll carry on my legacy, and eventually one day when the time is right, you can come back here, and you will have your hidden potential unlocked. And I liked that scene. It was a very sweet scene. It was kind of like she was passing down, the rod. And we already know Akko had the shiny rod for a while now, but it was actually a better way for her to receive the rod. It was like she was officially getting the rod from her idol. It's kind of like this. Even though Akko found it in the forest and she's been using it constantly, it's not the same, and it doesn't hold the same weight as the actual idol that really owns the rod handing it over to you. When she handed that over, it's kind of like, I accept you for who you are, I respect you, and I understand what you're going to have to go through to become someone that's like Shiny Chariot, like your idol. That was a really sweet scene, and I wonder if Akko ever does realize who she was talking to, for instance, Ursula Sensei, and realizes it's Shiny Chariot. I wonder how she's going to feel about that. But so, overall, a really good conclusion to the episode for potential Akko development, and I hope Studio Trigger does use that potential to the fullest, because right now, I've noticed that there is a repeated formula, and I would like to see some difference and also mixing it up, because one of the things I want to see from Little Witch Academia is actually these characters being dived into and seeing them study, learning, and all that, and that's what we're probably going to get, judging by what we saw with that flashback with Akko, seeing how, Shiny Chariot was having to study and all that. Most likely, Akko is going to be hitting the books, really trying to study and learn how to use magic, going all in, because she realizes she sucks at it right now, and she needs to try harder to be able to go through it. But also, that entire flashback was more like an inspiration for her, too, because Shiny Chariot has very similar origins to Akko, because Shiny Chariot wasn't someone that was gifted, wasn't someone that was like Diane, that could, use magic, flawless magic. She wasn't like that. She had a lot of problems when she was, growing up trying to learn magic, and eventually she just got good at it, and that's kind of what's going on with Akko. So Akko's taking the very same path that her idol took, and most likely she's going to improve upon it, and probably become an even better witch than maybe what Shiny Chariot ever was. So we'll see where that goes. But overall, the episode, very enjoyable when it comes to Akko. Now, talking about the actual plot or the actual conflict of this episode, besides that, there was something building up behind the scenes, which pertains to the VIPs of this episode, or the people that are outside the magical world. And there is something that is becoming a reoccurring theme, I noticed, of Little Witch Academia, besides the formula I already talked about. There's something to do with money. We know, obviously, Luna Nova is not really doing that good. We know they're having to accept students, more students than they ever had before. Even if they're not really gifted at all, they have to accept them in because that's what's going on with their school. Their school has people barely, coming in to want to learn magic anymore, so they're having to accept anyone they possibly can to probably keep their numbers up. On top of that, they have a very low budget. They don't have a lot of money, which we saw in last week's episode with Fafnir, so we know they're having money problems. It's very obvious, judging by the workforce they had, of how the students had to work too for the school. It's just very obvious that the school is facing a lot of financial trouble. On top of this, we do know that magic is dying. It's a very ancient concept to a lot of people that are not, people that are witches or wizards, and we see the outside world in this episode of how they feel about that, especially from a politician's standpoint. And you gotta remember this, okay? It's obvious that Luna Nova is being funded by the government. In some way, it's definitely being funded. And when you think about it like that, if these politicians or these people that are coming to inspect the school realize there's no point to keep the school open, they're obviously gonna just shut the fucking shit down. That's what they're gonna do. That's what companies do. That's what politicians or whatever do. If something is not producing or doing something right, they're gonna shut that shit down. And that's kind of what's going on here. If Luna Nova doesn't continue to improve itself, then they're gonna shut it down. And that's what's becoming something reoccurring in this series. Like, I've noticed that popped up in last week's episode, it's popped up in this episode. Luna Nova is facing a crisis, and the only way I feel like this is gonna be fixed is if something really drastic is done. And I feel like Akko might be that key for that change, because obviously talking with that politician boy, Andrew, in this episode is probably going to be a good thing for the future, because you gotta realize, in this episode, Andrew was someone that didn't really care much about magic. He gave no shit at all about magic in general, but towards the end of the episode, it seemed like he opened up a little bit to magic, or overall really did like Akko in general, and so it might make him see magic from a different point of view. So when the time comes to when maybe he has a decision to be made, like where the school will be shut down or something, maybe he will stand up for the school because he knows what maybe magic could do, you know, the gifts it can do, or the type of joy it brings to others, and so he will realize why they need to keep the school open. So I feel like Akko befriending, you know, Andrew in this episode is probably going to be very helpful for the future, especially for someone that's very high up in, you know, politics and stuff. Most likely he will be a very valuable asset. So yeah, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. How did you feel about this week's episode of Little Witch Academia? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Please let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. And I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.